And now it's my great honor to introduce you to Josh Shepard. You guys have all been enjoying Smile Booth this morning. Yes, yes. So, so actually, a little bit about Josh. Before he founded Smile Booth, he spent 8+ years in the forensic accounting world, concentrating on data mining and e-discovery. And you decided to jump into the photo booth world in 2009. You saw the need for a well-designed, technologically advanced, modern photo booth in the marketplace, and you and your wife set off to make that happen, which is really cool, working with your wife. That's awesome. So the early prototype phase was known as Queso. Yes, I love that. Yes. A chance meeting with his current partners in Marfa, Texas led to 5 days of desert driving, discussing the future of what has become a trend at events all over the world. Smile Booth basically was the first selfie machine. So Josh, his wife, and soon-to-be 3 kids enjoyed traveling the country. Please welcome Josh Shepard.
Thanks very much. So I'm more comfortable in Excel than I am at any Adobe Creative Suite project. So I'm not like y'all. I'm a little bit different, and I've arrived at this path at a kind of a strange, circuitous route, but I think I can explain it and kind of tie it together to crossover today. When I looked at crossover and when I talked to Irma and Shauna a few months ago about speaking on it, I thought I had it all nailed down, and then you start thinking about it and you really don't quite understand what it is, and you start thinking about cars that look like bugs and Ford and Chevy, and so I looked at, what's crossover, the process of achieving success in a different field or style, a point of place of crossing from one side to the other, or having 2 pieces that cross. And when I think about crossover, I think about life, and life is, you take a shotgun, and the pattern that it makes against the wall, if you were to shoot a sign, you've got holes everywhere. And you start connecting those experiences in your life, and the more that you connect, you're able to piece them together, and they form this giant puzzle, and lines going everywhere. And that is how I think I've arrived at where we are today with Smile Booth and me personally. And so I want to kind of tell you how I got there and see how we can apply that, to maybe what some of you guys are going through. So, early on, I had a decent backhand, so my mom thought I could become a model. Obviously, this is one of those careers that didn't work out. I was an extra in a movie. I was a Boy Scout. We had to run from the elevator from the person that was attacking us. I don't think the movie ever actually finished getting made, but I'm not a model. When I was 13, I chose soccer over tennis. My parents gave me a choice. I'd played soccer since I was 5. So they said, okay, you got to choose one or the other. I chose soccer, and that led to the next 10 years of my life. Led me to Virginia, to a small liberal arts school in the middle of Virginia, instead of going to Georgia Tech to run cross country. So instead of becoming an architect or an engineer, I was a math and economics major. So again, not probably the only one in this room, I would gather. And because of that, I came out of school and I worked for Arthur Andersen. I started in Washington, D.C. in their Value Solutions group, which basically meant I was starting off in litigation consulting. Got sent on a project down to Nashville. That was a short-lived engagement when Enron crashed. So this was 2001, 2002. After that happened, I guess while I was in Nashville, I had the luxury of 2-day, 4-day weekends because I was technically still living in DC, but really wasn't. On this 4-day weekends, I'd been traveling quite a bit to Marfa, Texas. So I was going out often as twice a month, and this is back when you could still buy an Adobe in Marfa for like $20,000. So this is quite a while ago. It's not like it is today. And so the opportunity presented itself when Andersen went under to move to Houston and start working at KPMG. So I thought, okay, I'll do that, closer to Marfa. It made a lot of sense. I'd been to Houston a few times, and it didn't seem that bad, although I don't quite know if I knew what it was really about at that time. So I moved here. I was living downtown at the Rice, which you may be able to see. No one lived downtown in 2002. No one went downtown in 2002, unless you went to work. So in that time period, I actually had some friends from college that lived here, and someone that he was dating knew a girl, and so I got set up on a blind date. So where else do you take a blind date than Tampico on airline? Because everyone looks great in fluorescent lighting. So we did. It's kind of a test too. Let's see what she's like. Let's see, if she can handle it. She loved it. She ordered a dozen shrimp, took half to go for lunch the next day. As we were talking, she wanted to come back and see my loft. So I said, okay. She's gonna kill me later. I may put her into labor, so I'll have to hurry this one up. I happened to have I'd actually had a little bit of background in photography. I'd taken a class and I had a film camera. So I had some negatives on the counter that I was looking at earlier that afternoon, not anticipating that she was actually going to be back there later that night. She looked at a couple of them and she was like, hey, that's Max Patch. And for those of you that know what Max Patch is, probably no one, it was this bald in North Carolina. And so it was at that point where you're like, okay, these are two extremes because this is in North Carolina, she's from Texas, I grew up in Georgia, school in Virginia, but our paths had already crossed on this mountain, not really at the same time, but down the road. Little did we know that we also had the same exact tent. Make, model, color, everything. So that was a little random as well. So 18 months later, Brooke and I are married. We're married in West Texas, where we spend a lot of our time. And I've always been a fan of design. I'm still in the consulting world. I'm still doing it. It's okay. But I knew something else I wanted to do something. I had this kind of void. So I thought, okay, I'll go back to architecture school. So literally the afternoon after I had interviewed at Rice, we found out we were having our first kid. So, all right, no more architecture school. I'm going to stay in consulting. So, there we go. So I stayed in it and, progressed along data mining, e-discovery, financial models. Then we get a project, I think this is 2007, December, January timeframe. We have to go to Istanbul because there's an oil company in Russia who has been nationalized, and they're trying to get records of all their stock certificates so that when the government comes in and takes over, they have some proof that they actually own what they said they own. Again, no Photoshop, nothing like that. But what we needed is we needed a way that we could get 12 people into Turkey, take photos of all these certificates, and get them back out of Turkey without anyone knowing it. So, I'm in the forensic accounting world. This is like CSI, not really forensic accounting. So I'm tasked with putting this together. How do we do it? So I start Googling, and we get these copy stands, we get Canon PowerShot cameras, and I find this piece of software that will let you take a photo from a computer, because what we had is we're staying at a Hyatt in Istanbul on the club level. We can't be seen in groups larger than 4. The stock certificates come up in Louis Vuitton suitcases, like real deal, old school. The guy pulls in the garage, takes the club level elevator up, 2 suitcases, hands them off, takes 2 with him, goes back down. So we're having a blast. We're sitting in a suite, 10 days, 12 hours a day, flipping a certificate. One person takes a photo, the other reviews it to make sure you can see it, and then it flips off the pile. So complete blast, right? Not at all. We wind up getting them out of the country on iPods, because iPods at that, they were fairly new, and we figured out you could actually put a file structure on them without anyone looking at it from the user interface. So 4 of us flew out of the country with 2 iPods on us apiece. The guy behind me had the unfortunate, as we're going through the security, he had to bring all 12 hard drives home. So as he's going through customs, they're like, what's going on with you? And so I'm just making my way through. I wanted no part of this. Jonathan made it through, so we're all good. We're all on the plane. And we get back. So that was kind of my introduction into this whole auto capture a photo world. I guess it was 2008, a little bit after that, Brooke came and she said, hey, I want a photo booth for my wedding business. She's a wedding photographer. So I'm like, okay, I'll build you one. I can do this. A year goes by and I hadn't touched it. Life, we had Stella was, 4 or 5 at that point, 3. So it wasn't gonna happen. She convinced me that we needed to get some professional help. So I said, okay. I had seen these shipping containers off of WA at a new development, the Mirabeau B, and found out who did it, MetaLab. So I called Joe and I said, hey, you've done these containers. We obviously think alike because we both like container architecture. How about you want to design a photo booth? And he was like, sure. I was actually at a wedding 2 weeks ago and they had one. Great, let's meet. So New Year's Day of 2009, we met. And that was kind of the start of this latest adventure that we've been on. So we went back and forth for probably January to May, June on the design. So this is the initial design of Queso, and it was fun. We sent Joe a bunch of inspiration, so I started getting into my mood boards or whatever you guys call it. Got my creativity out and no longer in a spreadsheet, and this was the initial renderings that they came back with. What we soon realized, though, was that this is when Facebook is coming online and people are taking photos. No one really cared to be behind a curtain. And it was way more fun to watch what was going on as it was happening than it being, pipe and draped or enclosed or so that you couldn't see anyone. And so we nixed the curtain. And that's what came with Queso. So this is June 2009. Brooke hosts 12 different photographers, 12 other women photographers in Marfa. There's one husband that decides to come along because he's going to see his friend in Germany. His friend actually wasn't in Marfa, or his friend in Marfa was actually in Germany, so he wasn't there. So he wound up staying with me. I had planned just to cook and be kind of support for everyone as they're hanging out. We wound up within, an hour of me meeting him out there. You could tell that, okay, we're both doing the same thing. So Whitney, I learned within 30 minutes, I had these plans of sitting by fires all night and eating steak and having a great time. Well, Whitney was a vegetarian and he didn't drink, and so I'm thinking, well, what am I going to do with you for a week? Like, this is just, what are we going to do here? Because you're in the middle of nowhere, the desert. There's no vegetables. He's like, well, I eat fish. Okay. Good luck with that. So we wound up driving around Marfa for West Texas 5 days, and we figured out that he and his wife Jessie had the brand Smile Booth. Brooke and I had queso that was going in a fabrication for the prototype. It actually wasn't called queso then. I don't know if you guys have been to Terlingua, there's Cosmic Kathy's Cowgirl Cafe. It's like pink trailer restaurant. We had just had lunch there, and I guess we had some queso in our tacos to eat. And we're driving up from Terlingua to Alpine, and he's like, hey, what about queso? Like, yeah, that sounds great. You can't see it here, but it's got perforations in it, and so it really fit. So yeah, queso, and then photo con queso. What's better? It's like chili con queso, but photos and cheese, and so we spend this whole time kind of going through this, mapping out, what's going to happen in our heads, and we spend the next 6 months, kind of in this little dating period, because he wasn't sure, I wasn't sure, our wives weren't really sure. It's like, this is the right thing to do, because we're all in this thing together, and so it's, do we pull it all together and make it happen? We finally did. So January of 2010, Smile Booth, as it pretty much as today, was started. We came in with a product. They had a brand that was very well recognized, very well designed across the U.S. And so you've got me with my numbers, my financial background, my data. You've got Whitney, who comes out of the alternative marketing scene of Nike in Seattle in the 90s. Everybody's laughing at me. The people that know us. And then you've got our wives, Brooke and Jessie, both award-winning photographers. And so it was just a great start. We had Ashley on board, who was she does all of our design and creative and brand work. And so we set out to build an experience that not only looked good at an event, because we didn't want something that was just a big red box in the middle of a wedding, because that's what we started out as. We thought weddings. So we wanted it to look good. We wanted it to make the people look good, because there's nothing worse than getting your photo made and hating it. And we also wanted it to make it fun. And so we sought to bring back that experience that you get when you look in the mirror, when no one's watching. And if you'll notice, that's what happens when you use the Smile Booth. Most of them are triggered with a clicker, so you're taking your own photo. You forget that there's 50 people watching, or maybe 500, depending on where we are. And so you just get this kind of childlike innocence back, where you lose yourself in it. And you'll see some of mine later in this presentation, but I may not always have that childlike innocence and joy. But most everyone does. So one thing leads to another. Weddings, the photography business, Jessie and Brooke, and they're traveling around the country, shooting weddings, bringing Smile Booth along with them. That leads to more corporate work. The iPad's released 2010, and so we say, okay, why don't we take it and we make it so that we can send you your image immediately? So in the summer of 2010, we developed an app, our first foray into this, that let you text the photo to yourself. We thought, let's use text because everyone's got their phones. I think the iPhone was just out, so it was a really easy way of doing it. Then later on, one of our developers knew a developer at Twitter, and so we got early access to an API, and so now we're we're sending data, we're doing emails, and you can tweet on it. So that leads us to a job in Portland. So Aubrey has to drive from Houston to Portland with queso, because that's what we have. It was too expensive to freight it, and really we were just a little scared to freight it. So that goes off successfully, and we start doing jobs around the country, New York, Las Vegas. I've driven to Vegas once. It's a rite of passage, except for Nick so far, that when you come into the team in Houston, you have to make at least one Vegas drive. They're usually terrible. The Dodge Sprinters break down, or you get sick and food poisoning from gas station food. But it's kind of one of those things. So we thought, okay, there's got to be a better way of doing this. We're cloud-based, data capturing, internet-enabled photo booth, but we're still driving this thing all over the place. This isn't it's not good for the bottom line. It's not good for the sanity of our guys. These long trips aren't just going to work. So we needed something smaller and lighter. I forgot that slide. So now we're in space. So smile booth. We need something smaller and lighter. I ask around, and we find an engineering firm. It's about 8 guys at that point. They're in Pearland. So I'm like, okay, I'll go meet with them. Didn't really have too high of expectations. They didn't really know what to expect. A friend of mine said they're great. They can do anything. So it turns out they're former NASA guys, eBay developers. They worked at a bomb detection company. Okay, these guys can do it. So what really sold me is the fact that they had taken, when you walked into their office, they have a mannequin dressed as a soldier on a gurney. His name is Haywood. So they had Haywood hooked up to these devices, and there were 5 different devices that when the soldier was wounded in battle, they had to hook him up to, put him on a copter, and get him to Germany. They each had their own power supply. They were very heavy, and Sparks had taken this, condensed it to one unit. It was like 20 pounds, web-enabled so that the doctors could monitor the progress of the soldier when he's in flight, in transit. So surely, if you can do that, you can build a photo booth. This is going to be great. We're going to put this thing on the moon. So we did it. That was a very, very long process because that was our first time at everything from the circuit boards to the enclosure to the couplers. Everything was custom. Everything was what we had wanted it to be. Queso, we had started out with off-the-shelf components, but this was ground up. So a few hiccups along the way, but we get through it and we pull through, and now we have Linus. So we have Sparks. We're internet enabled. We can check this thing on a plane because it's in 2 cases under 50 pounds. And so we just start cranking these things out. Several thousand events later, we're anywhere from backstage at the Guys' Choice Awards, doing either video booths with Pee Wee Herman, or animated GIFs with Jim Carrey, or I could be at your kid's bar mitzvah. So we don't really distinguish. We'll do anything, and that's the beauty of what we do, is that it really applies to just about anything. So we have 3 products at this point. We have Queso, we have Linus, and then down the road, we kind of came out with How. So our capabilities matrix at this point is more complex than that shotgun pattern. It's, you basically need a degree to figure out what we can do. And because of that, and that whole crossover aspect, so a good example is what we're doing in the back today. Well, we can do animated GIFs. We can take 1 photo. Let's just take 4 photos at one time with 4 different cameras, stream it into a GIF, and now we can do a multi-camera animated GIF. Well, and guess what? You can send that out, and it can have your logo on it, and then the whole 9 yards. So what we've done is we built a platform that's kind of loosely associated with all these different pieces on the shotgun pattern. And we take it, and when a client comes to us and they want to do something, we say, okay, yeah, we can do this, and we can do this, so surely we can do these 2. often happens that you get into it and you're like, oh, but I missed this one over here. So now we have to go and drag the line over here, which is usually a last-minute phone call to a developer. Hey, can we do this? We pull it off and we keep moving. And that's led us to really be what we're calling ourselves today, and that's photo engineers. We take what we do, and you guys, this slide was more of a placeholder, so you don't have to read everything on it, but we're able to take the technology that we do and apply it to different things. So eventually, we will have a drone app. Do we have one right now? No, but we have the pieces to make everything else work. And I had a meeting with a guy that flies drones, so that's great, that's a step. So now all we need is the app. So we can build that. What I've also found being in Houston, we never left Houston. It was always on our minds to get out of here because we got here and there's nothing to do. It's hot in the summers. And then we started quickly realizing that Brooke always wanted to leave because she grew up here. I kind of started to like it because of the people. And you kind of have this industry of people, let's call them closet creatives in Houston. Because I can walk into a machine shop and they're milling, couplers for the oil industry and spend an hour telling this guy that I need a base plate milled out for cords to come through, and he started asking me what for, and then later on, he's like, yeah, I can do that. I can take what we're currently doing, the skill sets that we have. You can get things anodized here. I didn't know that. Did you know that? Jay Leno brings part of his pieces for his cars to get chromed here. That's kind of crazy. That it's really expensive, but they do really good work. What we found is that by going and asking all of these people that are, we have engineers, we have architects, we have people that build things in Houston. And that's one of the pieces that I was able to put together 2 and 2 with the help of MetaLab and our friends at Merge Studios. We can build just about anything here. I recently was turned on to a shop that builds parts for Intel that they ship to China. Who would have thought, right? So in my world, we're able to actually assemble everything. We do it here. And then what I've seen throughout this journey of the consulting is that I've been able to take my background in the data. I've been able to apply that to what we're doing with our clients, with our social media metrics, data gathering. So I know you all go to school and you think, okay, well, I'm never going to use this again. I certainly didn't think I would ever use Calc 4 again. I still haven't. But everything that we do has an application at some point. And I was able to turn what was a pretty down season in my life, the consulting, I wasn't really happy in it, into something that brought smiles to everyone across the country and even across the world. And so what I want to leave you with is, I think that whatever field you're in, whatever you're doing now, it has an application for you later on in life. And you may not expect it, because I certainly didn't. And I had no idea that when I signed on at Arthur Andersen, 13 years ago, that I would be doing what I am today. And that I would be up here. That I could go around and have a beard for 4 years. Like, who would have thought that? So, I'm not always happy. I have kind of my solemn testing face when I set these things up. But I hope that what I do, what we do at Smile Booth, brings everyone the same joy that we're able to get out of it. And that you take your experiences and you look at how your paths may cross and how you can leverage that and make that into something bigger and better. So, that's it. You can do a lot of creative things in Excel. You can do a lot of creative things in QuickBooks. They may not be legal, but I think you have to have your outlets, you have to have your passions. Part of our, starting out, we bought a house in 2005, 2006. So part of that was just redoing that, adding on, drawing different plans. So I think, to answer your question, find it outside of what you're doing, or maybe find out where your passions are, and try exploring them there. Find something outside of what you're doing, or even try and make what you are doing exciting, or creative. We had financial models that you had to get really creative to piece together. So I think it's just a matter of where you look. That's what I would say.
So I'm wondering, what advice do you like to give people who move here from other places, like New York and Michigan? They just moved here. So I'm trying to tell them how great Houston is. What do you like to tell people?
I would say get out. No, not out of Houston. That was meet people. You're not going to need your winter clothes, so you can throw those away or hide them. Things like this. I mean, being at Creative Mornings, I know a lot of you here, and I didn't know any of you before I left consulting, which is kind of ironic. I actually met a whole lot of people once I actually got out of what I was doing, which was supposed to be, selling work and meeting people. I knew attorneys. So yeah, I would say just get out and explore, and Houston's got a lot to offer, and I found that everyone's extremely friendly. Walk up and talk to people. Javier.
So I love that you mentioned how lucky you were with the timing of like iPad coming out and cameras and social media and things like this. I'm curious what your thoughts are on just the number of cameras that we all have now and the resolution at which we're capturing everything that's happening. Like, where do you see that going? I know the drone app was an example. Yeah.
That's an interesting question. I mean, cameras are everywhere. They're in your pockets all the time. They're on your head. I don't really know, and it's a little scary, to be honest with you, because everything is captured now, and everything is digitized. I don't know where we're headed. I think that it's good from the standpoint that it does allow us to get that creative outlet a lot easier than it would have in the past. It turns everyone into a photographer, which is great, and that's actually great from a brand's perspective, because now they've got people that are willing to push them from their phones. And so it's really kind of turned the marketing world around. 'Cause they're not having to rely on campaigns, they're relying on just pushing a hashtag and watching what happens with it. So I don't know, but I will be interested to see where we go with it. Deji?
I think one of the biggest things we're dealing with when we're thinking of transitioning from where we are to where we're back to this fear. And I was wondering, what was your interaction with fear, if any, and can you speak a bit about how you kind of navigate around that?
So it's really scary quitting a job, especially when you have a baby and a family. I kind of tapered off of my job, so I was pretty smart. I knew it was time to leave when they hired us for their holiday party, and they didn't know they had hired us for their holiday party. Or they didn't know I was behind it. So I figured we were doing something right, and it was, I was going to show up to work an event because I was still working all the events at that time. So you kind of have to manage it. I think that if you believe in what you're doing and you're doing something good, then it's going to work out. I've seen that if you put your energy behind it and your hard work, then it's going to pay off for you. I think you have to be smart about it, though. You can't just quit cold turkey and expect everything to be okay. You have to have a plan in place and direction. But I was fortunate to have a pretty successful wife that I guess I became the recipient for a while. Patience and, have a good support group around you too. Involve yourself. Get people that you can bounce ideas off of. That's important as well, because you don't just want to go into it not knowing if it's going to work at all. You saying?
With your background in data and mining, all the data you're collecting right now, thousands of pictures, what do you have in mind? 5 years down the road, are you going to be able to tell what Houston was feeling 5 years down the road? What are you, and in terms of privacy, all these pictures that you're collecting, where do you see that, in your mind? What's going to happen to that? Two different questions there, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and I'll kind of take it in another direction too, facial recognition. There was an article in the New York Times about the guy that kind of developed facial recognition, and he's scared of it. He's not a huge proponent of it. So I think that you do have to be a little bit cautious. As a parent, and as a parent of friends of parents that are large Instagrammers, you see situations where people are taking kids' photos and using them in inappropriate ways. So I think you have to be cautious when you are capturing and sharing that media, but there's a certain extent to which you have to, that you can worry about it, and you don't want to live your life in fear or worry, but be cautious. Yes?
How many times have you captured weird drunk stuff on film? Yeah.
I don't know. Guys, do we have any vomit photos? I don't think so. We get your random nudity and spillage. But yeah, often. Pretty much every party. Not this morning, I don't think, but. Yes?
So you talked a little bit about Marfa, and I know that it's really exploded into this creative hub, which is really neat. But it sounds like you kind of got into it on the early end. So I'm just curious, what was it about Marfa that drew you to it? Because it's really a small place.
It is. My aunt had bought some land back in 2000. And then they bought a house, and so spring break of 2001, my last one in college, we drove from Virginia to Marfa. Hated it. It was brown, it was dry. I got food poisoning because we crossed Candelaria, and I ate a taco, and it was just miserable. When I guess 6 months after that, I started working and traveling more out there. I really grew to appreciate it, and at that time, it wasn't nearly what it is today. In just the 12 years, it was kind of a haven, a place you could escape. And we spent a lot of time doing some work on the house out there, so it was more of another outlet for me. But then we've just kept going and can't seem to stop.
But there's a Prada there, so, right?
Yeah, if you like left shoes. Yes.
So with the topic of crossover, you went a very drastic crossover from the data to the smiling kids and celebrities. What would be your biggest piece of advice in that, where you're at now with having such a broad crossover, in moving forward again, and maybe in the next 10 years, maybe you're not doing this, maybe you're doing something else. What piece of wisdom have you taken from this experience and think you might be able to apply? Again, if there's another crossover going.
It takes a lot longer than you anticipate to get things done. That's what we've learned, is that, okay, lead time says it's 4 weeks, well, you got to double or triple it. So a little bit more planning and knowledge and having the background and work through some of the kinks on both the tech development side and production and whatever I end up doing next. If there is something past photo booths, we always think about that, and You don't want to be the 45-year-old photo booth guy. Or even the 35-year-old photo booth guy. It's even creepier. Patience. Patience is a big one.